Good morning, it is Tuesday, it is the 28th of April and today's vlog is going to be something a little bit different. I've been doing these daily vlogs to keep me sane and to keep you company during this period of lockdown, so you normally see just a lot of what's going on in my daily life, but today I'm going to film a tutorial, or rather I'm going to attempt to film a tutorial to make one of my hand sewn dodgy bags, which are just simple drawstring bags for keeping your knitting or your crochet projects in, or well, anything you want to keep in it, quite frankly. So throughout the course of today, which is a Tuesday in the week, we are homeschooling. I'm also working from home. My husband is here working from home. We've got 2 children in the house doing their homeschooling. We're currently just on a 20-minute break. I'm going to sew a dodgy bag and film a tutorial to show you how easy it is to just quickly cobble one together without worrying about doing things properly or getting things wrong or cutting things wonky. You will see from what I show you that I am in no way an expert or professional sewer whatsoever. In fact, I'm probably completely the opposite. I've never learned to sew. Everything I know is just from working it out on my own or from watching the odd tutorial on YouTube or asking someone who knows more than me. So I really am not an expert in this field at all, but I can still cobble together a very usable bag, and so can you. If you want to try and do them like I do, then watch this video, but just be warned, there are some very questionable tactics used to get to the finished product, so don't expect a professional tutorial here. And also don't forget that on the 1st of May, the dodgy bag make along starts, so if you're looking for a good excuse to have a go at making one of these, now is the time. I'm hosting it with Claudia of the Crochet Luna podcast. It runs from the 1st of May to the 1st of June. There'll be a chatter thread in Claudia's Ravelry group, and there will be a finished objects thread in mine, which I suppose I better set up. And there'll be a prize drawn from each of those threads at the end of the month. So yeah, so if you want to get sewing and you're looking for somewhere to start, watch the rest of this vlog, and it should be quite fun along the way if you're not interested in making a bag. Right, Phoebe's there on her gadget. It's time to get back to school, Phoebes.
I just want one more round.
Okay, I'm at my ironing board in the kitchen, and you'll hear background noise because my youngest daughter is doing her homeschooling on the computer. She's doing Carol Vorderman maths at the moment. And I've got everything together to show you what you can use. I never really oh, hang on a minute. That is my ironing. I'll do that later. So I've got everything together here that you're going to need to make a bag, and I'm going to do it throughout the crazy day of lockdown. I'm working, the kids are homeschooling, my husband's working, there's lunch to prepare. I'm just going to show you how easy it is to do it all, even with all that going on. Well, not easy, but you know, you can do it. So I've gathered some bits of fabric from my stash, and I tend to use a lot of upcycled stuff, and just, it's amazing what you can make with the smallest remnants of things, really. So this is a pair of Dan's old trousers. They have a hole in them in the knees, and they're just getting worn, so he's donated them to me. I've washed them, and this is perfect because it's quite a thick fabric and it's good for the bottom of bags, so that's one option. I've got some plain white cotton fabric which I just bought on eBay, which is perfect just for lining. Saves me having to make a decision about what type of lining to use if I just use white. And then over here I've got a pair of my old, a remnant of a pair of my old jeans. That's also good for the bottom of bags. I've got an old cushion which I bought years ago, and this has been used in so many different projects. I wish that I had more of this. And again, it's good for the bottom of bags. It's like a very thin corduroy. It's a really nice mustard. And then I've got some bits and bobs of fabric here that was sent to me by, I think these are all from my friend Lorraine. And she sent me a selection of different things, and there was a lot of yellow based fabrics because yellow is my favourite colour. So I've got some of these to play with, and I've got one of Dan's old shirts as well, so that would make a good lining. I've used this for lining before, or even the outer side of a bag. So I'm just going to have a look at what I think goes nicely together. So these are my base fabrics. I'm just going to lay them all out and see which of these I think goes. I love this yellow with this mustard, but I also like it with the blue, and I also like it with Dan's trousers, so that's a definite option. This yellow is really nice, especially with the dark blue. This one, again, that looks really nice with the dark blue, but I also like it with this. And then I've got a really bright one just for something different, which also would look really nice with the blue. What would it look like with Dan's old trousers? Ah, not bad. I might do blue and pink, and then maybe this combination and that one, but not all today. I'm going to start cutting them out, and then I'll sew them together another time. But for the purposes of today's demo, let's have a look at how much of this fabric we've got. Sometimes I haven't got quite enough. I think I've got enough. So we're going to do the corduroy fabric and this. So as well as your fabric, you're also going to need, if you want, you can use interfacing. I haven't got that here to show you. You're going to need some drawstring cord or anything you want. You can sew your own drawstrings just with a length of bias binding or fabric or anything. But I just bought this really cheap on eBay by the meter, and it really is inexpensive and it's perfect for drawstring bags. Yeah, so that's what I use. And then any embellishments that you want. So I'm going to probably make a little tag to go on the side, and I'm probably going to sew on a little D-ring. This is just a little D-ring that came off of another bag that broke and we were getting rid of. And whenever we get rid of bags, I always save all the little bits, the sort of metal bits and buckles and D-rings and things, just in case I want to use them in my own projects. You're going to need a decent pair of sewing scissors for cutting the fabric. These are really old, I've had these for years, but they are really, really good for cutting fabric. I wouldn't use anything else. I've actually got 2 pairs of sewing scissors for cutting fabric. And then you'll need some pins, or I've recently converted to using these clips. Again, I got these really cheap on eBay, free postage and everything, and you just use them in place of pins to clip the fabric together, which if you're as clumsy as me, is perfect because it stops you injuring yourself. What else might you need? I think that's about it. And if there's anything else I think of, we'll come up with that as we go. You're going to need an iron. This is just the family iron, and using an iron when you're sewing a bag really is going to make things about 1 billion times easier and neater as you go. So it's really handy to have an iron to neaten things up during the sewing process and after you've sewn it all together. And a sewing machine. You're going to need a sewing machine, although it's perfectly possible to do everything I'm doing today by hand, but I don't do that, so I will be showing you how to do it with a sewing machine. Right, let's cut out some fabric. I don't use a pattern. Over the years, I've just taken note of the size of bags that I've made that I've preferred. So we're going to make my medium sock bag pattern. And all I've done is draw on a piece of paper, which is sellotaped together and there's full of holes and is all crumpled, the sizes, and I've written it down. So what I'm going to do is share with you now on the screen and in the description box below the sizes that I use for everything. Okay, so for the contrast colour, which is going to be the bottom of the bag, so 11 by 5 for the bottom part, and then it'll be 6.5 by 11 inches for the top fabric, which in my case is this one. And then I'll go over this again with you in a minute when I cut it all out. And then for the drawstring casing, which I'm going to make using the same fabric as the main body of the bag, hopefully, if I've got enough. Yes, I have. It's exactly the same width, so it's 11 inches by 2.5, and I'll show you what I do to make the drawstring casing as we go. And then for the lining, it's 11 by 11. For the lining fabric. So I'm going to start cutting it, and I'll write it all down below as well, and I'll remind you as we go. Okay, so I've ironed my main fabric. I'm going to use my super duper ruler, which I've treated myself to. I've bought one of these, I don't know what you call them, plastic measuring square thingies. I'm going to draw the measurements directly onto the fabric. You're not going to see any pen marks by the time I finish sewing it, and it's nice and quick and easy. Now, if you don't have a super duper ruler, because you haven't treated yourself to one, you can also use what I previously used before I had the super duper ruler, which is a ruler and a set square. So I would start off by drawing myself a straight corner, and then I would use the ruler to measure what I wanted, and then do another corner and so on. So you can easily do it with these, but it makes it a bit easier to have it with my super duper ruler. So I'm going to do 11 by 6.5. I'm going to get as near to the edges as possible, so I'm using every scrap of fabric that I can. I'm going to draw my corner so I know where I started, and because I need 2 of these, I'm actually going to double the height, so I'm going to do 11 by 13, but just make sure that I mark the middle. Bless you again. Okay, I've measured out my markings on my fabric in my unprofessional way, and I'm now going to get my scissors and cut it out. Okay, while I've got the main fabric out, I'm going to cut out my drawstring casing as well, which is the 2.5 inches by 11 inches. So I'm going to need 2 of those as well. So I'm going to measure 11 by 5 and then just cut it in half. Now with this, it doesn't really, I mean, probably it does matter, but to me it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be entirely accurate, because you're going to be folding in edges and neatening it up anyway. No one's going to notice, and it's your bag, so who cares? So I'm just going to very loosely draw around where I should be cutting, and then just wing it. I told you that this was no professional tutorial at the beginning. You knew what you were getting yourselves in for. Okay, I've still got a bit of my main fabric left. I'm going to make a little tag to attach my D-ring that I showed you earlier. So all I'm going to do is cut a little bit of fabric out. Now I can see I've got a nice long bit here. I want to use that for something as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that out. How long should we make it? Let's make it all the full length of that bit. Okay, so that is not accurate at all. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be doing some ironing and sewing to turn this into a kind of handle for my bag to go on the edge. But I'm also going to take a little bit of that fabric, just a tiny bit from one end, to attach a D-ring as well. It's always nice to have handles and attachments and things, but I'll show you what I do with that in the next stage. Right, I'm going to cut out my bottom fabric, and I'm going to do 5 inches by 11 inches for this. And as you can see, I've got it's all a bit cut out like that. I have no one big bit, and because it's corduroy, I want both pieces to have the cord running in the same direction. So I'm going to cut one bit out from here and one bit out from here, and I'm going to do what I did when I measured out the main fabric, and that is I'm going to give it an iron, and then I'm going to draw my measurements onto the fabric and cut it out that way. Right, now we're going to cut out our lining. Now this is going to be a square of 11 by 11. This is just a very basic cotton sheeting fabric that I bought a couple of meters of on eBay. Just going to give it an iron and cut it out. I have been known to sew because we're going to sew the main fabric and the bottom fabric together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so you'll end up with a piece that is also 11 by 11. And I have been known to do that first, then lay that onto my lining and cut around it without bothering with anything else. That is how unstructured and unprofessional my sewing is. But I think we'll draw around the template just to show you how I do that with my crazy weighting down technique. Well, it's not a crazy technique, sewers do it. I'm just not sure how many people use cans of tuna. Okay, we've got all our pieces. So the first thing we're going to do is sew our bottom bit to our main colour. So I'm just going to make sure that my fabric is the same way up on both pieces, and also that my base fabric is the same side up on both pieces. There's a very, very subtle difference on each side. Just want to make sure that I've got it matching. I'm going to use my clips to pin them right sides together like that, because we're going to sew them together to make one panel. So I'm just going to use my clips to secure it in place. Don't need many. I'll probably only put in three. I'm going to do that on both pieces. Okay, so those two bits are now ready to take to the sewing machine. But if I'm going to get my sewing machine out, because I don't have a craft room or anything like that, it has to go on the kitchen table, and we're homeschooling at the moment and working. So if my sewing machine's coming out, it's going to do its work and then have to be put to one side again. So I want as many elements that I can sew ready. So I can sew these two pieces together to make the panels. I can sew the three sides together of my lining, and I'll be leaving a gap at the bottom for turning out, but I'll show you how I do that in a minute. So that is also ready to sew. And then the pieces that I have for my drawstring, I can sew to get them ready, but I need to iron those in a specific way first, as I need to do with my scrappy strip. So I'm going to take you back to the ironing board and show you what I do. We're back on my rather grotty looking ironing board. So first of all, we're going to do the drawstring strips. Now remember, I didn't cut these out like beautifully accurately, and it honestly doesn't matter. By the time you finish the bag, you're not even going to notice. What I'm going to do is fold in a little bit at one end and give it a press, and then fold it again to encase the raw edge. Like that, and I'm going to do that on each end of both strips. And then when I get my sewing machine out, I'm going to sew a line along the top bit to secure it all in place. Okay, this is my little scrappy strip. I'm going to make a little handle with this. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half as accurately as I can, and just iron a very small crease in it so I can see where the rough middle is. Then I'm going to fold in my edges to just before that middle crease that I've made, and I'm going to give it a really good iron to fold down that edge. And then I'm going to turn it around and do the same on this side. I'm going to fold it to that just meeting before the crease that I made, fold it in half, and then just give it a really good press. So I'll have a bit of a wonky strip with a bit of a gap in the middle, like that. There you go. Nothing is accurate, nothing is perfect, and then I'm just going to fold it in half so that my two nicely folded edges meet, and give it a really good press so that those edges are in the right place. And what I'm going to end up with is a nice strip, and I'm going to sew it just along that edge, and I'm going to sew it just along this edge here to encase it all in place. So I've now got everything that I need to do for my first stage of sewing, which will make getting the sewing machine out worth it for 10 minutes, and I can do that maybe while the girls are having lunch later. So join me in a little while, and I'll show you the next stage. So here's another unprofessional part of my sewing. My sewing machine lives here on the floor next to the dining room table, uncovered and dusty. Let's get it out and get it plugged in. Okay, it's about 12:10. The girls are in their final lesson before lunch. Lilia's in the living room doing her science, and Dan's going to be keeping an eye on her. and Phoebe's upstairs doing guitar, which means she's on YouTube watching a guy called Andy teaching her how to play Royals by Lord. So I'm going to snatch this opportunity to do my first lot of sewing. Then I'll just need to do a little bit of pressing and one more bit of cutting, and then it'll be the final sew. So let's see if I can get this done and show you as I go. So the first thing I'm going to do is sew my little scrappy strip that I did earlier. I'm just going to sew all the way down the loose edge just to combine it into one. And then on my drawstring casings, the bits that I double folded over, I'll see if I can do a close up of it. So that's double folded over. I'm just going to sew that down all along here to create a nice edge that won't fray when the drawstrings go through it. Right, I've done my drawstring bits and I've done my handle, and I've now got my lining, and I'm just going to sew all the way round. I'm going to leave the top open. I'm going to sew down one side, along the bottom and up the other side, except when I get to about here, I'm going to stop, double back on myself, lift up the foot, pull out the thread and then join again here, so I leave myself a little gap. I'm going to try and show you. You can just see here where I have stopped sewing and I've just pulled up the the sewing machine foot, pulled the thread, left a gap and then rejoined sewing here. And that's what I've done to leave a gap for turning it out at the end. And now I'm going to sew my outer bits together. I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch seam along where we've clipped. Right, I've sewn all my pieces together and now I'm going to iron them. So we're going to start by just giving our handle a quick iron just to flatten it out. And I am going to grab my D-ring because I want a little bit of this to hold on the D-ring. So I'm just going to fold a little bit over and I just want literally enough. I just literally want enough to fold over and give a little bit of sewing room for when I sew it in. That's all I want, not too much. Maybe like an inch either side of the D-ring. There you go. Now with the drawstring casing, I'm just going to fold it in half and make sure the end seams are the ones that are matched up. I'm not too worried about the bottom one as long as it's roughly in half, as long as the ends are nice and even together. Just let my iron do the work. So I've now got my drawstring casing like that, and I'm going to do the same with the other one. Okay, we're racing through because I've got to make lunch in a minute. Right, this is the panels that we've sewn together. Now on the back, you need to make a decision about which one you're going to allow to lie flat. Now, seeing as I've got a thicker fabric that's harder to iron a nice sharp crease in, I'm going to let the thicker fabric lie flat and fold the main fabric over. So I'm going to iron it quickly on the back like that, and then turn it over and give it a really good press on the front. I'm going to try and work from the bottom upwards to make sure that I'm not creating an extra fold. Now you can top stitch along this line, but I very rarely bother because I very rarely have the time, so we're not going to do that today either. That's my first panel. I'm going to do my second panel and I'm just going to give the lining a quick press as well. Now the next thing we need to do, right, you could go ahead and sew it together as it is, but I want to create a boxed bottom so it just sits nicely when it's finished. And I'm going to do this in another crazy way that you're not supposed to do it like. I'm going to put my two main outer pieces together. I'm going to turn it so that the wrong side is facing me. I'm going to get a set square. I think I'm going to do a box bottom of 1.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure in 1.5 inches from the edge and make a mark. And I'm going to measure 1.5 inches up from the bottom and make a mark. And then I'm going to use my set square to hit this mark and this mark, and I'm just going to draw around it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I warned you this was not a professional tutorial. Okay, now that I've done that, I've marked it and everything's lined up on top of each other, like that. I am going to go ahead and just cut it out through both thicknesses. So I've only actually measured it on one, I'm not pinning anything, and to be honest, I'm probably not being terribly accurate. But I'm doing this between homeschooling and making lunch and then starting my day job. And no one's going to notice if it's a bit wonky. So that is now done. I have got my box bottom and I'm going to do the same on my lining. So just make sure that you've got the opening at the top. There we go. And I'm going to do the same. I'm going to cut a box bottom out of the bottom of the lining. I probably should have done this step before I boxed the corners, but that's good. It's a typical representation of how I bodge my way through these sewing techniques. What I want to do is I'm going to put my two outer pieces right sides together, and I'm going to make sure when I clip them, I'm going to make sure I match these seams here and clip them, because I want them to be as closely matched as possible when I sew them. Okay, now I've clipped those bits together. Let's zoom out of it. Now I've clipped those together, I want to put in my handle and my D-ring. So I'm going to just fold over my handle like that. I want it up near the top here. So we want the raw edges. We want the raw edges poking out, and the nice edges that we're going to actually see on the inside sandwiched between the two right sides. I'm just going to leave a bit of excess there, and I'm going to, excuse that beeping, that's the iron reminding me it's on, and I'm just going to clip that there so that it's there for when I come to sew it all together. And then on the other side here is where I'm going to put my D-ring. So I'm going to put my bit of fabric that I cut earlier, wedge it on there, and again I think I'm going to have this about the same size, or maybe I could have it, let's have it down the bottom, shall we? Let's have it down there, just after the seam. And I'm just going to get that as tight in as possible. It might be a better idea to use a pin for this, but I can't be bothered going to get it. So I'm just going to clip it in, and I'll hold it into place as I reach it. I'll do it manually when I get there. Okay, I'm going to go and sew around the outside of this and take you over to the sewing machine, and I'll show you how I do the box corners. Okay, I'm now going to box the corners so I've sewn in my handle here, sandwiched in between, and I'm just going to trim that excess bit off. Get some scissors, because I don't need so much excess sitting inside the lining of my bag. There we go. And then on the other side I have sewn in, contrary to how I showed it to you before, I've sewn the D-ring inside, sandwiched between the two right sides there. There's only a little bit of excess there, so I'll probably just leave that. And I'm going to box the corners. So I'm now going to open up my boxy bit, and I'm going to match the side seam with the bottom seam and try to get it as accurate as possible. Get the line of the bottom seam on the line of the side seam, and then match up the edges. And now I'm going to put a clip right in the middle, and then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Okay, so now I'm just going to sew along this line here with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on the outside bit and on the lining. Okay, it's time to put things together now. So first of all, I just want to check that I have not missed any tricks with my outer bit. I'm going to turn it out. I'm going to go have a good look at all of those seams, check that there's no holes and that there's no like glaring disasters or anything that needs fixing whilst the bag is still in bits. But I've caught all the seams, everything's sewn in there. It all looks good to me, so I think we're good to sew the whole thing together now. So the first thing we need to do before we sew it together is put on our drawstring cases. And the way I do that is using my clips again. I'm just going to clip them facing downwards, so the raw edge is at the top and the folded edge is at the bottom, and I'm going to clip them where I want them on each side of my bag. So I just eyeball this and work out where it's roughly in the middle. And the same on the other side. Okay, so now that's done, I'm going to put my right side out outside bag into my inside out lining. So you can see this is still inside out. So essentially the right sides will be matching. Right, my camera just ran out of battery, so we're going to finish this bit using my iPhone to film it. So I have clipped it all together. I've made sure that the side seams of the inner and outer layers are completely matched up along this seam so that it looks quite nice when it's finished. I've got my drawstring cases are now sandwiched between the lining and the outer fabric, and I've just moved the clips across. And now I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and I'm going to take this bit out so that I have a round bit that I can sew. I'm going to pop my, if you can hear background noise, it's because it's lunchtime and lunch is being prepared. But I'm going to pop my bag across like that, and I'm going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam all the way around. And because my cutting is generally a little bit inaccurate, I might have to fudge it a little bit along the way and stretch bits and everything to make it fit without puckering. So that's what I'm going to do now. Right, it's time for the moment of truth. It's all done. I've sewn around the top, everything's encased, and we're going to turn it out through the gap we left in the lining and hope that everything's going to be okay. And then once we've turned it out, we're going to give it a nice press with the sewing machine. With the sewing machine? No, we're not. We're going to press it with the iron and make it all nice and neat. And then I'll come back and show you how I do the drawstrings. We have a finished bag. That's what it looks like with the little D-ring. And I've got my handle on this side. And the box bottom came out quite good. I think I got quite a good match on the box bottom there. Got a few bits of fluff here and there to pull off. And I've given it all a really good press. Now you could, like I say, you could have top stitched across this section. And you could top stitch across here. Now, look, I've just noticed I've not caught the drawstring, but I'll go back in. I haven't sewn up the lining yet, so it'll be easy enough for me to turn that back out and just go and catch that bit of drawstring casing there. Oh, that's annoying. It was nearly perfect, but fortunately I hadn't sewn up the lining because that always takes me a few days to get around to doing. So I'll just show you how I do the drawstring. So I'm going to take one end of my drawstring cord. I'm going to use white for this, and I'm going to put a big safety pin through it. And then I'm just going to bunch it up through the casing, doesn't matter which one you start with, until you get to the other side. And just push it through like that. When you get to the other side, go back through the drawstring casing on the other side of the bag. Okay, that's done. I'm going to now pull this so I've got an end that overflows about that much, because I'm going to have to tie a knot and I want a little bit of excess as well. So I've probably got about an extra, I don't know, 10 centimetres. I'm going to take out my paper clip, or safety pin rather, and I'm going to tie a knot like that. Sometimes I put a little cut of fabric and make a little tab on the end here to encase the frayed ends of the drawstring, but again, as is the theme of today, I can't be bothered. And then I'm just going to trim the ends off like that. So I've got a knot that looks like that. Ta-da! Now I'm going to do the second drawstring. So starting at the opposite end to where I've just made a knot. So not this end, but the other end. I'm going to go in again and do the same thing. I'm going to bunch it up and pull it through, and then turn it round and go back through the other side. And I've gone above the drawstring I did on each side. It probably won't stay put like that, but at least it will start off like that. And again, pull it through, cut it, take your safety pin out, match up the ends, tie a knot, trim the excess off, and you have a drawstring. Albeit a drawstring that I've got to go back in and sew a little bit, but there you go. Ta-da! One dodgy bag.